Hi, this is Maria Mandarino. Thank you for being here today. I am a certified Enneagram practitioner, certified spiritual director, licensed and board certified acupuncturist, and certified Bach flower practitioner. So again, thank you for being here. Happy New Year. It's my first episode of the new year. Just kind of coming back from a little bit of being sidetracked at the end of last year. I'm doing a lot better. So thank you for the well wishes too. Um, if you are new to the channel, this is a place where we look at ancient wisdom traditions, including the Enneagram, but not limited to the Enneagram. Much of what I talk about and have talked about to this point has had to do with the Enneagram, and expect that to evolve and expand and grow in different ways. So I hope you're open to that. So if you haven't already, please subscribe, like the episode, subscribe to the channel. Remember to hit that little alert bell so you're updated when episodes are posted. I'm going to really try to get back to weekly, but this might take a little bit of time yet because I really was sidetracked. For those of you that don't know, I had an emergency appendectomy at the end of last year. So catching up with a lot of things that happened in my practice, including an unexpected move, which is all good now. It's funny how things all work out for the best. So again, please subscribe, like, comment, share your your feelings about the episodes and this episode in particular. We're going to do a little bit of different things today. So anyway, your contribution on that level, participating really helps the channel and has helped the channel tremendously over the last few months. So thank you if you've been participating, and if you haven't yet, please do so. And some basic announcements. If you'd like to work with me, I do Enneagram typing online. I also offer spiritual direction online, and I do Bach flower consultations and mail out formulas online as well. So all of that work is done in the virtual space. If you are interested in the work that I do as an acupuncturist, that is here in the West Phoenix Valley. So you can reach out to me through the same place, my website, mariamandarino.com. And I do offer complimentary brief kind of meet and greet session for spiritual direction and the Enneagram. And I believe I have one up there for the Bach flower consults. People usually just jump into that one. So I encourage people to take advantage of that to kind of see if we'd be a good fit to work together. And then we go from there. All right. So if you're interested in working with me, again, mariamandarino.com. You can schedule online. I have online booking available there. Um, and that should cover those announcements, I think. So today I want to talk about fear. And I ruminated about whether or not I wanted to start the new year here. But because of late, I've seen a lot of fear-based decisions coming from people around me. We are also astrologically in a pattern right now where Pluto is moving out of Capricorn into Aquarius. Pluto is a planet of transformation. Everything has a higher and a lower aspect to it, just like in the Enneagram. So transformation also, the flip side of that coin is fear. So we're in a transitory stage having to do with fear on a planetary level. So everybody's feeling some shift. Depending on where these transits are happening in your chart. Everybody's kind of feeling it. So, the Enneagram gives us these opportunities to explore our shadow, right? Which is, that's where fear lives. It's not the only thing that lives in our shadow, but it's certainly in there. And then, the Enneagram gives us these opportunities to, stretch and reach to the qualities that our higher self offers us. So that's why I'm taking this on right now. And I want to specifically point out people who get caught up in fear that has to do with competition or perception of competition. And I'm going to explain why I'm putting the word perception in front of competition, because that's important. People who are hung up on lack, scarcity, there's not enough. And that can boil, that pot can just boil over into abject panic. So, if you know me, if you've worked with me, I always talk about the spectrum of the emotions, because it's never just one. There's a spectrum on every emotion, highs and lows and all the stuff that's in the middle. So I want to point out this idea of competition. I see it a lot in my field. People are just hung up on who's next door to them, right? So the other day I was driving past a little strip mall and there were two insurance agents, competitors, theoretically. I'm not going to name who they are, but two different insurance companies directly next door to each other, sharing a common wall. And imagine this, they're probably all doing well, both of them probably doing well, right? So isn't that interesting? Competition can actually be side by side, sharing a common wall and, not be competing. Okay. So just so you know where I'm coming from here. Okay. So what's under this, right? So we have fear. The other side of this, I'm going to call it confidence. Okay. Fear contracts. Okay. Think of an ice cube in water, right? Anything cold contracts. Anything warm, open, and flowing is going to expand. Okay. So there's your opposites of sorts. Okay. This fear that contracts creates a sense of control or need, desire to control. And the opposite of it is this openness, this confidence, this expansion, this letting go, this warmth, as opposed to the coldness of contracting, right? So the fear side of it, mention that's your higher self, right? Your lower self, rather. There's your shadow, right? So the person that's stuck in fear, the person that's contracting, the person that feels limited, they're in their shadow. And the person that's open, expansive, and leaning into their confidence and being assured that there is more than enough for everyone, that's their higher self stepping onto the stage. So I just want to kind of point out that the differences there. I want to then leave you, well, not leave you, but impress upon you a phrase that I say over and over and over again. Now, I've used the Enneagram working on like business coaching type things with people in my field, okay? Because I don't feel we should work with people in fields that we don't know anything about. So I stick to what I know in the healing arts when I work with people on the business level, right? You have no competition. I'll repeat it again. You have no competition. Now, that's not an ego-based statement. I'm not telling you you have no competition because you're great, because you're special, because you're anything else other than you are you, and no one else on the planet is you, for better or worse. Okay? You have no competition. And when we start deciding that we have competition, we start to contract, we start to go into fear. Okay. So if you are stuck in limitations, limited thinking, if you're stuck in restriction, if you're fearful, I can promise you this. You are in your shadow and nothing good's going to come of that. All right. Now, the difference between you, because you're watching this, okay, the difference between you and as I joke with people that I work with, between you and anyone driving around on the freeway, okay, is you're here because you get that. Okay. You're here because you get that the shadow is not the place to be. We've all been in it. We all go to it. Okay. That work is never done. But your awareness around the fact that the shadow presents us with opportunities to work on ourselves, that's where it's at. Okay, so if we're ever going to change and we're ever going to get this right and we're ever going to make anything easier for ourselves, it has to come from awareness, the ability to recognize your shadow, and start to make conscious changes. Okay, so that's why we're here, that's why I do this, and show up for you guys. So again, you have no competition. If you're stuck in your limitations, if you're stuck in restriction and fear, you are in your shadow. Okay. So that said, fear has a place, just like in what I do in the acupuncture clinic, pain has a place, right? We don't like it, but it gives us a message, an indication that something's wrong. When I had my appendicitis attack last month, I was very glad to have pain, because without those signals, I wouldn't be here talking to you right now. So fear has a place, just like pain has a place. Real fear, though, okay? Real fear. Fear of genuine danger is going to serve us. And I ask you, how many fears do you have? How many fears cross your mind in a given day that really have to do with your survival? Okay. Most of the fears that I think cross our minds are not those kinds of fears. So discernment, that's one of the big things I talk about with people in spiritual direction, whether we're doing Enneagram work or not. I talk about discernment a lot, so we have to understand what's even on the table. All right. So stepping back, breathing, assessing, and just really discerning, what is this fear? Is it a healthy fear? Is it a fear that's going to serve me and protect me? Or is this a fear that's causing me to contract and causing me to hurt myself or possibly hurt others? Yeah, you need to assess, or is this really about survival? Or is this just a fear that's gone out of control and causing us to panic about something that isn't even legitimately there? Okay. So, with that as a background for today, I want to talk about, I'm going to actually read a little bit from this book that I read many years ago. I joke it's taken me at least 10 years to read it. Power versus Force, by David Hawkins, Dr. David Hawkins, so MD, PhD. And when I joke about it being 10 years, I read it, and then I read it again a few months later, read parts of it again, and every time I came to it, another layer of understanding emerged in the same exact words that I had read before. So it's not that thick of a book, but it's dense. It's dense with information that will meet you in different ways along your journey. So depending on where you're at, it's one of those books I encourage people to just buy a copy, because you're going to go back to it, and should. A year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, whatever it is, it's going to mean something to you a little different each time, because you're different. We're always different with each day that passes. So, power versus force has to do with a method of testing the emotions, kinesiology testing, muscle testing, but it's behavioral kinesiology. So it's based on how our body responds to thoughts, ideas, feelings. So if you're familiar with kinesiology, usually people they'll do it to test foods, for food allergies, or sometimes herbs. And you hold something, and they test your either like an O-ring. You'll try to somebody will pull your fingers apart, or you put your arm out and press it and see if your muscles go weak and the arm goes down, or if the O-ring between the two fingers opens up. Your body doesn't like what it is that you're holding. Okay. It makes you literally physically makes your body go weak. That same system was applied to emotions in this book, Power versus Fear. And he talks about that, and he's calibrated different emotions. And it starts at, first one, it calibrates at 20, and the highest goes up to 1,000. And we're going to talk about those, but I want to start out with fear, because fear calibrates at 100, according to Dr. Hawkins. Next level up is, well, not the next level, a few levels up is acceptance. That's 350. Love calibrates at 500. And I want to point out that Dr. Hawkins says that only 0.4 of the population reaches this level of consciousness. So that's 500. 0.4% of the population. Okay. And bear in mind that when your body goes weak because it's responding to a harmful substance with kinesiology, with behavioral kinesiology, it's a harmful thought or idea that is physically weakening your body and your energy, your body's energy, which makes your body go weak. Okay, so a little bit further up the scale, this is said to be the level of sages, anything from here up. Peace calibrates at 600, and enlightenment calibrates between 700 and 1000. That's said to be a state of divine grace, divinity, that's pretty much reserved for ascended masters. So probably not anyone most of us have met. Okay. And there are categories in between there, emotions that he has calibrations for. So here's what's really alarming, especially when we're talking about things like fear and how much of it is going on around us. Now, and I'm talking about day-to-day life stuff and people that I see, but let's just talk about turning on the news for maybe 8 minutes, okay? 85% of the human race is said to calibrate below 200, okay? That level is shame, guilt, apathy, grief, fear, desire, anger, and pride. Below 200, 85% of the human race is calibrating at shame, guilt, apathy, grief, fear, desire, anger, and pride. Okay, so think about that. Think about what you're giving your power to. Think about what people around you who you love and care about, what they're giving their power to, if they're having a hard time. And when we love them and they're having a hard time, we're having a hard time. That's just fact. All right. So it's understand the energetics of where that's coming from. That kind of pain is calibrating below 200. 85% of the human race is living there. And that's when this book was written. And this is quite some time ago. Let's see if I can quickly get that for you. 2004. 85% of the human race was calibrating below 200. I don't know where it's at now, but it's probably not higher. So again, let's just think about that. Let's think about how important that makes shadow work. 85% of the human race is calibrating from shame to guilt, apathy, grief, fear, desire, anger, and pride, because they're in their shadow. So shadow work is absolutely vital. I want to read a little section from the introduction of this book, just give you a little bit of a flavor of it. And this work was built upon the work of another doctor in the late 1970s. Dr. John Diamond refined this specialty into a new discipline he called behavioral kinesiology. Dr. Diamond's startling discovery was that indicator muscles would strengthen or weaken in the presence of positive or negative emotional and intellectual stimuli, as well as physical stimuli. A smile will make you test strong, while the statement, "I hate you," will make you test weak. Okay, so that's kind of the premise. That's a very, very watered down premise. But if you're not familiar with the book and the concepts, I just wanted to kind of give you that. So again, I want to ask you the question of what are you giving your power to in the instance of fear in that moment when you're locked up, if it's abject panic, or if you're just fearful and a little anxious. Stop, pause. First question is this fear appropriate? Is this fear going to ensure this thing that Zoom does when you give them a thumbs up? So yeah, there's a thumbs up. So what are you giving your power to? Is it appropriate? Is it to my benefit right now to be scared? Will it protect me? Will it keep me safe right now if I'm scared? Is it a logical, valuable fear? Okay. If it's not, the next question is, what am I giving my power to? So the title of the book being Power versus Force, power is what's preferable over force, because if we're talking about force, we're trying to control, manipulate, over control the system. That's never going to work. That's only going to make everything harder for you and anybody around you. Okay. It's not the energy of warmth, openness, expansion, or abundance. It force is the energy of pulling in the sidewalks, basically. When you're giving your power to something, your true power, you're applying your essence to it, your vital life force, that which makes you you. Okay. So power, essence, where are you applying your power? What are you giving your power to? What are you giving your essence to? As opposed to, what are you wrestling? What are you fighting? And what are you applying force to? What are you controlling or trying to over control in fear? So I'm going to go back to the book. And this is from page 72 of, I think this might be the second edition. Doesn't say. Okay. It isn't life's events, but how one reacts to them and the attitude that one has about them that determines whether such events have a positive or negative effect on one's life, whether they're experienced as opportunity or stress. Okay. Psychological stress is the net effect of a condition that is being resisted, but the condition does not have any power in itself. Nothing has the power to create stress. The loud music that raises the blood pressure of one person can be the source of delight to another. A divorce may be traumatic if it's unwanted, or a release into freedom if it's desired. The map of consciousness also casts a new light on the progress of history. The distinction between force and true power is most important for the purposes of this study. We can, for example, investigate a historical epoch such as the end of British colonialism in India. If we calibrate the position of the British Empire at this time, which was one of self-interest and exploitation, we find that it was well below the critical level of 200 on the scale of consciousness. The motivation of Mahatma Gandhi, who calibrated at 700, again, these are these higher ascended type people, was very near the top of the range of normal human consciousness. Gandhi won in this struggle because his position was one of far greater power. The British Empire represented force, which calibrated at 175, and whenever force meets power, force is eventually defeated. I'll read that again. Whenever force meets power, force is eventually defeated. He goes on to say, we may observe how throughout history society has tried to treat social problems by legislative action, warfare, market manipulation, laws and prohibitions, all manifestations of force, only to see these problems persist or recur despite the treatment. Although governments or individuals proceeding from positions of force are myopic, to the sensitive observer, it eventually becomes obvious that conditions of social conflicts won't disappear until the underlying origins have been exposed and healed. The difference between treating and healing is that in the former, the context remains the same, whereas in the latter, the clinical response is elicited by a change of context so as to bring about an absolute removal of the cause of the condition rather than mere recovery from symptoms. It's one thing to prescribe an antihypertensive medication for high blood pressure. It's quite another to expand the patient's context of life so he stops being angry and repressive. Chinese medicine, we call that treating root cause. Okay. So getting back to that line that I repeated, wherever force meets power, force is eventually defeated. If you're stuck in fear, and again, anywhere on that spectrum, of fear, just, being a little anxious and insecure about things versus, abject panic, right? You're dancing with force. You're not dancing with power. Okay. So anything that vibrates higher than that is going to be your obstacle. Okay. I mean, he goes as far as to say wherever force meets power, force will be defeated. So I read that because I think it's that important. And if you find yourself wrestling something, particularly something related to fear, I want you to ask yourself, what are you wrestling with force? What is it? Does it have a name? Does it have a color? Does it have a shape? Does it have, does it have human form? Is it an idea? What is it? What are you wrestling with force? What's under that fear? And where's your power gone? Okay, and how do you get it back? So here's where I want to step into the Enneagram pool with all of that. So my question is, where is fear causing you to contract in your Enneagram? Okay, and we're going to go through each type, and these are going to be simple little questions. And we're going to, the Enneagram, the shadow of the Enneagram each type has something to do with the 7 deadly sins, right? That was the original slant on the Enneagram. They're kind of getting away from that a little bit, but it's kind of fun. Well, fun maybe is not the best word. It's interesting to explore fear, and the Enneagram types through the 7 deadly sins. And they're a little, they're adapted a little bit because there's 9 types, right? And 7 deadlies. So let's look at the body types first. So let's start with type 1. I think the question, and there's not only one question here. So if you lead with any of these other types, this might not be your question. It may be a helpful question to get you to the next question or the underlying question, but these are good starting points. Okay, I think of them as being on a diving board, and you can just kind of get you into the pool. Okay. So type 1, question of where is fear causing you to contract in your Enneagram? I think the question is, what if I screw up? Which is going to keep you stuck in procrastination. You're never going to step out there and do it because you may screw up, right? So I think fear is in that question. They also say, fear is the devil, right? So that's another way of looking at this. Where's the lowest vibration in this fear? And I think for type 1, one of those places can be, what if I screw up? If you can get to that question and bring power to that question, and take force away from it, I think you're going to start getting to somewhere. So, and the lower energy, this, so-called sin of type 1, and sin, just so we're all on the same page with that word, just means you're missing the mark of reaching your higher self. There's no other connotation to that word in this forum anyway. So for type 1, that sin is anger, because they're just so caught up in the perfection trap, that it can, lead to anger, right? Type 1s can be pretty angry. They're not the only angry types, but there's this slow burning kind of resentment that can turn to anger with ones, right? So if you're exploring fear and you're a type 1, look at those things. Look at your anger, look at your irritability, look at your resentment, and play with that question. Go into the river Styx with it. What if I screw up? Go into the deep dark and ask yourself, what if I screw up? How do I step into power instead of leading with force around that question? Type 9, the question where fear causes you to contract. I think your question could well be, what if they force me to take a stand or make a decision? And you know, for the 9, that means that might not foster harmony, which is 9's goal, right? So that can be a pretty fearful question. What if they force me to take a stand, or what if they force me to make a decision? That's going to bring up some fear for most 9s, if you're near your shadow. So the key there to look for, you know, the sin of the 9 is sloth. So if you're getting lazy, if you're narcotizing, if you're doing a little bit too much TV, too much Netflix, drinking too much, eating too much, that can be a reflection on that question. Where's the fear around, what if they force me to take a stand? Am I getting lazy? Am I avoiding that discomfort? There's where your fear is living. The question of where is fear causing you to contract in your Enneagram for type 8, that question is, what if they think I'm weak? Okay. So 8s will go into lust. That's the sin of the 8. So this excessive, over-the-top behavior may emerge out of that question. You know, there's a considerable fear around specifically for 8s. Someone might think they're weak, right? Because 8s are all about, they have to be in charge. They're the leaders, right? Being in charge means no one's going to put them in a vulnerable place, right? So, so the other side of that is, it going to be a little over the top if they're fearful and insecure, and they're worried that somebody might see them as being weak, potentially being weak. So moving into the heart types, the question of where is fear causing you to contract in your Enneagram, for type 2s, I think that question could be, what if no one needs me anymore? Okay. And the sin around that for 2 is pride, right? If they're overly prideful about being needed, or they're overly prideful about their role in community, in the family, in the workplace, wherever, being overly prideful, or letting your, you know, pride get hurt. The outermost of that in a 2 can be going into the rage of the 8. So if you're finding that you're a 2 and you're kind of going there, that's also another, that can be another flashing light for a 2. So yeah, that's pretty fearful for a type 2 to consider that they're not needed. Type 3, the question of where is fear causing you to contract in your Enneagram? I think one of those questions could be, what if they think I'm a fraud? Okay, and the sin of the 3 is deceit. So you know, 3s put up a really good front. They're the performer, the actors on the Enneagram, right? Fake it till you make it is one of their favorite mantras, right? So to think that somebody might think that they're a fraud, pretty scary terrain for a 3. Okay, they'll do anything, whatever deceitful face they have to put on it, to not be seen as a fraud, they'll do, you know, and all of that's going to vibrate at the level of fear, right? So 100 on that scale, right? And this is for everybody. That's where these questions, the lower responses to these questions are going to keep you at that 100 level calibration. Moving along to type 4s. What question, where is fear causing you to contract in your Enneagram? The question of where is fear causing 4s to contract in their Enneagram. I think one question for them could be, what if I never find what's missing in me? What if I never find that thing everybody else seems to have? What if I'm not unique? You know, and their sin is envy, right? So so if you're 4 and you're getting trapped in that fearful thinking of, what if I never find what's missing in me? What if I never fill the deficiency in me, is another way of saying it. And you find that you're caught in the envy of looking around at what everybody else has. You know, there's your flashing light. Okay, there's your evidence that you're going to a fearful place. You're calibrating at 100 and you're in your shadow. So we need to break the cycle when these things happen. So head types are next. Type 5, I think one of the questions 5 can ask to see where fear is causing them to contract in their Enneagram, where fear is putting them into their shadow. What if they want too much of me? What if I feel invaded is another way a 5 might think of it. What if I feel intruded upon, right? So what does the 5 do? What is their sin? They go into avarice, right? Greed, and they kind of pull it all in. 5s are, we can all calibrate at 100, 9 ways to do it, right? But 5s will do it. I think 5s and 6s will do it better than most of the 9 types, because 5s are used to pulling in and going to avarice and greed and pulling away, taking their resources away from others. So I think that 5 probably have a tougher time with this than most as 6. So we're going to go into the 6th question of where is fear causing you to contract in your Enneagram type 6s. I think a good question for you guys is, what if they betray me? What if I can't trust them? What if I do trust them and they prove that they're not trustworthy and they hurt me by betraying me? Any scenario like that. And the sin of the 6 is fear, which takes them out of faith, which is the higher expression, the higher self of the 6. We say 6 is the journey of faith, right? So if you're stuck in what if they betray me, what if I can't trust them, what if I do trust them and they hurt me, you're as far away from faith as you can get. So there's your work. There's your work out of fear. 7s, I think your question of where fear causes you to contract is, what if I end up trapped? What if I do that and I end up trapped? What if I end up limited? What if I can't do what I want to do? What if my freedom is taken away from me? Anything that kind of sounds or looks like that. And here's one of the clues that will tell you you're doing that or you're caught up in that. The sin of the 7 is gluttony. So if you're overindulging in some things, addictions, addictive behaviors that you've caught yourself in before, weaknesses that you know are yours, that have to do with overindulging, that's usually a little bit of an indicator that you're coming from a fearful place. So fear, it's something we all do. It's something we all face. Doesn't serve any of us. It doesn't help us serve humanity. And again, we're in a fearful time on the planet right now, this Pluto transit from Capricorn into Aquarius. Our experience of fear is changing, for each one of us. It's going to a different sign. So, so our fears are going to be experienced in new ways. That's all driven by your chart. So if you know your chart, look at that. If you know your chart, you're probably already looking at that. But I hope you'll try to put it together with your Enneagram type, because your Enneagram type is where your opportunity to flip it from force into power. For me, that's where the Enneagram just gives you that. You have to work for it, but it gives you the map. It gives you the options. And again, don't just stay in your type with this. Use your type, use the higher expression of your type, explore your wing, explore the security line. Be aware of the lower side of that line too, okay? Because I think you can get trapped in that as well. Takes a little more, takes a little more doing. And your stress line, be aware of what that looks like in the lower expression, in the shadow. Also be aware of the higher potential of that number in your stress line, because you have that choice. We always, always, always have choice. So think about the higher, the lower expressions, your shadow, your higher self within the Enneagram. Think about power versus force within your Enneagram. Remember, when you feel fearful, you are calibrating at 100. And I'm going to give you those numbers again. 85% of the human race calibrating under 200. So stretch, guys, stretch. We need you to stretch, get well above that. Okay. That other number, love is at 500, and only 0.4% of the population, as of the writing of Power versus Force anyway, was reaching that level of consciousness. I wish I had the numbers for where we're at now. I don't. But if we go by those numbers, we still got a lot of stretching to do. So, my friends, do your work, for yourselves, for those you love, for those who love you, for the greater good of this planet, the greater good of all the people on this planet. Keep stretching, keep moving toward your power. Don't give up your power. And again, if you want to work with me, mariamandarino.com. Please remember to subscribe to the channel, like, comment, and share, and I will see you next time. Okay. Also, if you want to contribute your own questions around fear within your type, because of course I'm not in your type. So, and there are many questions I think that can indicate that we're stuck in fear. So if you want to contribute those in the comments, I would love to hear them. Also in the comments, if there are any other topics you want to hear me talk about, please share those, because the purpose of this content is to help you get where you want to go in the ways that you guys are open to doing. So if it's something that I do, especially if it's something that I don't do, I'll tell you that. And if it's something I don't do, I'll try to find somebody who would be willing to be on the show with me to talk about those things. So share them anyway, even if they're things that I don't specifically do. We'll see what we can do about that. All right. So thank you again for being here. Wishing you all a wonderful new year. Stay in your power. Stay out of fear. Go into love. Okay.